everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai.
In the sense that I have a branch that splits into two shoots in here, so I'm probably going to cut this thing off right about here this fall. I've taken my knob cutter and I've gotten rid of some of that. So I just put them on the bottom, growing upwards into the bag. We fill it up with trees and then we water as we need to. Try to get rid of those air pockets.
So here we go, it's a little bit of March Madness. So it's the first weekend in March, and it's time to get to work on some of the bonsai that have been sitting in cold frames all winter long. March Madness means basketball in Minnesota. March Madness for me in the bonsai world means that we got a lot of repotting to do before full-fledged spring hits us. With the record snows we've had this year, it's been kind of sad and a lot of cabin fever building in because we know we're not going to get trees out there as soon as we'd like. And in Minnesota we already have a shortened growing season, so we like to get some work done so we don't get too bogged down. So I took 4 plants out of my cold frame, and this weekend my March Madness is going to begin with these 4 varieties. So what we have here on the turntable is a Satsuki Azalea plant. I got this one down from Brussels last year on a vacation. This one right now has just a great big kind of broom style canopy, a nice 1+ inch thick diameter base here. I have not touched it from the pot, but I'm going to get it into some new soil and get this thing ready for bloom. Now, when you read on the Dallas Bonsai care guides, one of my favorite places to go to learn how to take care of my bonsai is dallasbonsai.com, and when you look at their care guides, they suggest that you repot this after the buds of the flowers. Now, I'm a part of the Minnesota Bonsai Society, and all the members that I've talked to, they get a head start on their Satsuki Azaleas in February or March, and they repot them then and then put them back in their cold frames and get them ready for the spring bloom. So I'm going to choose on the side of I really got some cabin fever and want to start on my plants. So I hope this doesn't come back around and bite me on the backside later on. So in the first part though, I have to decide, am I going to repot it first, or am I going to do a little bit of pruning first? And what helps with that decision, do I repot it or prune it, is really what kind of pot it's in. I anticipate I will probably put this tree back in the pot it came. Generally, if you have a tree that's about 1 inch or so in thickness, when it's at the more ramification stage and more show stage, and you're going to have it in a bonsai pot, you would want the pot height, or I should say depth of the pot, to kind of match the thickness of the trunk. Now this pot is about 3 times that of this trunk. However, it's got a lot of foliage, it's great and big, and probably has a lot of supporting roots down in there, that I think I'm going to leave it into the same pot today. I still want this thing to grow, and before I do even more fine ramification. What's nice about this tree from the Brussels is it is so full, it's been taken care of really well, there's already some decent ramification. And even though it's still in the development stage, in my opinion, you can start to do some more fine-tuning with some potential future ramification. But I also don't want to chew up this tree too much because of all the buds that are on there. And this is, of course, a flowering bonsai specimen, so I want to see all the flowers this spring. So I'm not going to do too much cutting on the tree because I want to see the flowers. And then after the flowers are died off, then I will probably do some more trimming for this tree. It'll already be in its new pot. I can trim it then and then just let it go crazy for the summer. Well, typically in our bonsai trees, we want to be able to see the pattern of the trunk, which is the direction, the flow of the tree. How is this going to show the best amount of movement after we pick the nabari, or the base of the trunk, and how it flares out. So as we zoom into this beautiful canopy, you can see all the branches in there. We're going to go down back to that nabari that I was talking about. So the nabari, this bottom part of the trunk, we want to see this trunk fan out, kind of, you know, from center down over here, and then we want it to come down this way and go that way, right? And so we want to see what's going to be the best looking front of this tree based on that nabari. Now, even in this pot, I can't see it tremendously well.
But as we turn it around, again, here's a little bump right here. Goes down this way. So if that's facing right at me, this bump right here comes right at me. We don't like that. And that's literally where that bump shows, and that's literally what might be the front of this tree. So we might need to reposition this a little bit when we repot it. If we go turn this way, which typically would not be the front in this style of pot, we're going to come down in here and we're going to look at this Nabari and see what's going on there. I can't see much yet. Twist it around to what looks like to be the back of this tree. A lot of growth in the back, but what does that Nabari look like? Too hard for me to see. Here's that kind of bump growth down here, so if I twist it around, will that be too hard to see? So what we're going to have to do is do a little digging. So let's dig it up a little bit, and then we'll get a better view of that.
So I want to be careful not to create too much damage, but these surface roots I'm not so concerned about, because we're going to clip some of the surface roots out as well. As you can see with the close-up camera, I hope you can see. Can you see that? And we'll find out. Right about here, there's this little tree branch coming up right here. So this guy is just a new branch coming up. We're going to cut that kind of stuff off anyway. Starting to get a little bit better feel for the Nabari of this tree. Even with what little I pulled back, right here you can see this great big bump here. Now whether that's going to be a nice looking root someday or not, or I just take that whole thing off because it's just kind of gnarly looking, well, I don't know, I'll make that decision. And remember, that's your decision too. Most people talk about having a nice radial root pattern, so you're going to have a nice spread of roots. But you know, if you look at trees out in nature, is there a perfect blend of roots, you know, perfectly symmetrical with each other? One on the right side facing the east, or one on the left side facing the west as you look north, or whatever the case may be. You're just going to find what works the best. And generally, we're working from the bottom to the top. So we do want to see the base structure and then work our way up. What's the angles of these trees, the flow, the direction, and then the foliage kind of comes into play last at the end. So this tree has been around for a few years. I mean, it's still relatively young in the bonsai world, but for me, it's one of my older trees, probably in that 5 to 10 year range. We repot every 1 to 3 years with some varieties, every 2 to 5 years, every 3 to 5 years. Depending upon the age of the tree, or excuse me, the species of tree. So it's always hard to throw a general out there, a general repotting, because every tree is a little bit different. But the general rule of thumb is that we repot every couple of years for young trees, and then we wait a little bit longer for more mature trees. If you look at this, it looks like it's still in a pot. That is all roots. This is all fine roots from this beautiful tree, which is a ton of roots. It is grown around and suctioned to that tree, unbelievably so. Getting this thing out of the pot completely, starting to get some of these rough edges. Actually, they weren't rough. Ironically, they were soft and velvety-like because there's so much roots in this tree. I have never had a tree in my life with this many roots. I wish I could say it's because of my growing, but that's the quality you get when you go to Brussels Bonsai Nursery down in Missouri. So a lot of great root structure here. This is quite phenomenal. So we're working on this tree, and again, we're looking at this Nabari, and without even seeing a branch, you're able to see this this bottom of the trunk here, and what's going to be the best? What's going to be the best option here? And again, we got this kind of a curvy guy right here. So this isn't coming straight out at me like I thought originally. It's curving this way. So we're not sure how that's going to turn out in the end. Again, we probably don't want it dead center. So we're either going to cut this off and keep this as the front, or we're going to maybe twist it this way and this becomes the new front. Or perhaps even this way, so we see the little bump over here like we have a nice stretched out Nabari here. It's kind of going from skinny down to fatter here. We always want taper, fat to thin and thin and thinner. Looks like we still have to clean up a few more roots. This tree is just plumb full of roots. And so whatever I cut off on top here to see more of this is not going to cause much damage. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm actually going to get rid of this. So I'm getting rid of some of these little roots right here that are sticking up, and they're just right at the base of the trunk. My camera won't allow me to get closer without a focus, worrying with focus problems. So I have a little, kind of a bit of a knob right there. I just don't want it, so I just use my knob cutter there. Get this guy in there. A nice knob cutter to get a nice flush, concave little cut there. So you notice I got this big chunk off right here. Again, I don't want to destroy all these roots, but there are some corners and thick spots that I can just kind of get rid of some of those. And we're able to get rid of that volume of roots on this system right here. And right now, if I were to put it back into the pot, it still fits in there with a lot of extra room. We'll put some soil on the bottom, bring it back up. It's certainly going to fit in this one. And again, it's a very roomy pot. This might be the year where I decide to put it maybe in a little bit smaller part. I think those roots continue to grow outwards instead of down. We want that radial root pattern, so the roots are going to go out instead of down, right? So that's our goal. And so if I have too deep of a pot, it's going to keep growing down and not necessarily out. But as these roots clearly indicate, this tree was growing plenty of roots in every direction. Here we go. We have a pretty good tree now. Well, we have a great tree, I hope. That's definitely a lot smaller than it used to be. It's probably filling half of this pot instead of being root bound, which pretty much covered 100% of this pot with roots. Again, I will lift it up with some soil if I leave it in this tree, or I leave it in this pot rather. So the discussion on pots, a couple of things to keep in mind. Again, we talked about thickness earlier, but also, is it a feminine tree or a masculine tree? We've got a really more feminine, round, super duper lovely tree, and it's in a rectangle pot, which is a little bit more masculine. Now, this rectangular pot does have some nice curve to it, and it's got a decent, softer rectangle shape, if you will. So it kind of fits with this tree. I think it looks quite nice in there. It's fine. If we were to use a different pot to try to get more of the feminine side of this tree in here, let me grab a pot back here. So this is a pot we could use that has a little more feminine look to it. What's nice about this pot is if I were to measure with my tape measure, which I have around here somewhere, here it is, we do have about a 3/4 inch trunk. I was a little bit excited before and said inch, but no, it's not quite an inch, Dave. There you go. So the depth of this pot should be about the same as this, or closer to it, and this is a 1 inch from bottom to the maybe inside, maybe 1 1/4 thickness tops here on this pot. This would be a very nice pot to put this tree in. Got a little bit of a greenish color here that kind of matches some of the green in the leaves right now, and again from that angle. So that would be a good pot to put it in. However, as I mentioned, this pot does not have any holes in it. I would have to go get a diamond drill bit at a hardware store and drill a couple of drainage holes here and then hope it doesn't shatter. I have a bigger Sarah Rayner pot, but if I had this in a round pot, obviously it's not going to fit in there. I think it's a little bit too narrow round unless I cut a lot of roots off. Excuse me, it's possible, but it has this round depth to it that would support definitely the thickness of this branch, maybe too deep, but it would support this network of roots I have right now, but I'd have to cut a lot around here off, and I don't think that's quite worth it. I wish this pot was a little bit rounder. If it was about 2 inches bigger, I'd consider putting it in this Sarah Rayner pot. Nice pot, the tree's in good shape. It's probably in good enough shape to put in a nice bonsai pot or keep it in that kind of pot, but it's just, I think, just too small. But the roundness of this pot, the feminine nature with the feminine nature of this tree right now being it's such a big broom style, would be an option in the future. But this pot, though it has my drainage holes, is not going to be what's going to work for me on this particular journey. Another option is to use a plastic pot. And this is a little bit smaller pot than it was in before. So I could, again, a little bit less deep, because it fits right where it's supposed to sit, right there, without any rocks or soil in it right now. So I'd maybe trim a few more roots and put it in there. But you know what? I'm going to take a really nice azalea, Satsuki Azalea, and put it in a plastic training pot. I don't know if I want to do that. It's one of my prettier trees. It's one that I would display at our Mother's Day show in May at the Como Park Conservatory. So I'm going to keep it in this pot. Now again, as you can tell, when I put it in there and I sink it in there, this pot's too big. It's just a little bit too big. But if I leave it in this pot, maybe I'll get a little bit more vigorous growth again this year, thicken this thing up a little bit, and then I'll, on my quest to find a new pot for this tree, that's what I'll look for now. Might take a trip to go see Sarah Rayner, and maybe I'll find that perfect pot with her. So there's my black mesh in the first one, my black mesh. You're just going to take a piece of wire about that size. You're going to take your mesh, and then what you're going to do is pop this through the wire. Now there's a little bit of a rip there. I'll try to use some new holes. So once it's nicely in place there on your mesh, you put it back in your hole, flip it upside down, and there's your wire sticking out. And when you put them back down on the surface, now your holes are covered. Your holes are covered and good to go. So then we need some bonsai soil. I have to investigate my bonsai soil, so I'll be back in a click. So I can go either through the center, or I can go through the holes right there. What I'm going to do right now is put them through the holes. And we'll see where I should maybe put the second one. So we have to pick that front. We have to decide where the front's going to be. And so now I have to decide, this was the front back here, but it's got this root coming right out at us. So if I put that in the pot like that, oops, sorry for the camera jump there. I got this guy coming out and over here, right in the front of where this front used to be. That's no longer going to work for us on this tree. If we go this way, the root mass comes way out here. I'll have to trim the roots to make that work, and this gives us a nice little taper here, and then this direction here, this root could come out here and form a nice root there. If we go on this side, this root is hidden more because it goes in the back. So we're going to find our front first. So with the nabari, we're just looking at the nabari, or the base of the trunk first. What's nice about this trunk right here is that it angles to the left a little bit, and then you get this little trunk out here. There is some, width here. This is probably the thinnest of the views right here. It's thinner in here. The trunk is wider this way. So with a little bit closer up view, the tree could be leaned a little bit this way, a little bit more, but here's this view. This was the side view before. Here was the original front. You got the knob right there. I don't like that anymore. Here's the other side view. Got some taper here, and the tree naturally goes to the left a little bit. And then we have this guy right here, which was the back before. But again, the skinniest part of this nabari, skinniest part of the trunk. I could go at somewhat of an angle like this. So the problem with this tree, if you can see in the tree this way, we've got 5 different points of interest of branches going out. We got this guy right here, this guy right here, here, and here, and there's one even down here. We've got six branches coming right off the middle. Very cool looking. What I'm afraid that's going to happen down the road is that's going to make a great big bulge in here, and it's going to have reverse taper.
So we have wide, narrow, and then this wide chunk here, unless these branches don't thicken up too much. Or I'm going to have to make some really serious cuts on this tree, and we'll change the entire shape. It'll change it drastically. Again, I don't know how much I want to cut before I see the beautiful blooms on this plant, this bonsai. I want to see it bloom first before I destroy it. So I've discovered something that I might do, which would be a severe cut. And if you'll notice, after the main trunk, the first branch is right here. This is a bit of a slant right now, but the first branch is right here. Right after this branch becomes this nice split, which looks really pretty visually. You don't want a slingshot tree, but that looks kind of cool visually. Do I get rid of this inside branch here to put more gap in between the tree to see more through the tree? Or do I get rid of this first whole branch right here, this whole guy right here, and then it comes up and you get this nice split into two here. And the reason why I'm looking at that as a possible scenario is because if I do keep this as my front, with the root coming this way that we've talked about, I don't want this coming right at the viewer, so I want to get rid of that one. But if I get rid of that one, then I have this one next coming at me, so maybe I just twist it a little bit and have these fan out this way. So this is not an easy decision. And if I twist it just a little bit, in here there's a branch I already tried to cut but couldn't even fit my cutter in here last fall. And they got this branch right here, which Y's out nice and does some ramification. But maybe this whole branch comes out. And then I look at the tree this way and see all kinds of nice movement with the tree branch way back there as possible new leader down the road. So I think I've made a decision to cut this first branch off. No matter where you look at the tree from whatever angle, this is the first branch. And I want to make the tree a little taller. So to make the tree taller, I have to get rid of this as the first branch. If I choose to make this my front, then this will be out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this cut. Let me zoom in for you. This is the lowest branch down here. So I want to get in there. And I'm going to cut right here first. And I'll have to do a little bit of research, but I might be able to use this as a cutting. Might not be the right time of year, but I might be able to throw this into some soil with some root powder and get a new tree. I know we can propagate that way, I just don't know. I don't remember the time of year for azalea, so we'll look that up. The reason why I cut it so far back and left this little knob right here is because when you use these concave cutters, when you cut, it kind of squeezes in towards the tree when you have a big branch, and you might cut off a little bit too much. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't cut off too much. And this is a bit of a big cut. I might have to put some putty on here, some cut paste. So with my cutters, trying to make it nice and smooth. Someday that'll heal over and you won't even know that that was a branch there. Because that branch is gone, I can actually reach this one a little bit better and cut that one off. So now, I'm going to start the whole process over. What am I going to do for the front? Now that looks like a gigantic eyesore right now, but that'll heal over time if I keep this to be my front. The only challenge with this being as the front is I don't like this tree right in my face right here, so I'd have to get rid of this branch. And do I get rid of this branch right here where I cut one before and let this grow out? Or do I cut the whole thing back at the base here and let it shoot this way for some directionality over this way and curvature of the tree and all that? Got some nice ramification on these branches up here, but they're right out here at the viewer and we don't want to see that. We want to see some more of that trunk line. But maybe I can wire it over here. Maybe I can bring this one over here to get some nice curvature. So maybe I don't cut that one off just yet. some of the decisions you have to make. Now again, I don't want to cut this one up a lot today because I want to see all these blooms go, and there's some shoots in here, half a dozen shoots right here. I want to see them flower. So I think I'm going to wait on that cut, and I might do some wiring later on. This branch has a Y right here, splits off into two, but then very common to the azaleas, usually get 4 or 5 shoots here. There's 4 on each branch here. We're going to cut those down to 2, maybe 3, more than likely just 2. Mostly 2 because we want it to split off and to split off and to split off. So I would cut 2 of these off. I'm going to leave them on right now because I want to see all the buds. Right here in this cluster there are 8 buds that will flower here this spring if it keeps going to fruition with budding. If you look down this main branch right here, if you can see with me right here, I got the main trunk coming up. It splits off into 1, 2, 3, and then there's this 4th one sticking out here. Which one do I cut off there? Well, the skinny one isn't doing a whole lot. It's tall and lanky and just doesn't do anything. I'm actually going to cut that long and skinny one off because it doesn't do me any good right now in the design of this tree. I know I lost it. All right there. So here's that branch, long and lanky, no buds back in here. I lost 3 flower buds though. That's 3 less flowering buds. But again, you and the first look on this tree wouldn't even know that I took much of that out right there. I've been working on this tree for a little while. I'm going to make sure that I don't get these roots too dried out, so go ahead and give it a nice squirt down. We're just about ready to put it in the pot, but I don't want to harm this tree any more than I need to. So I'll just keep that a little moist right now. I'm having a hard time making this choice with the front. I think I've made my decision. So with this root structure here giving me nice wider taper at the bottom at this angle, I think I'm going to tilt my tree to the left a little bit, put it over to the side of the pot a little bit, and I'm going to tilt it like that and have that be my new tree. And that provides a nice little movement from here, and then this back branch back here, it gives me some movement that way, and then these other branches got some neat gnarly moves to them and twists, and I can reconstruct other branches along the way, but this just gives me kind of a nice angled tree that kind of has some curve from left to right, and then the branch behind it, which you can't see, goes a little bit left again. I can get some swirl into a tree because I know eventually well, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to have to get rid of some of these trees here because I've got 5 tree branches growing right out of the center of that, and that's going to create quite a bulge right in here. So I'm going to have to get rid of one for sure. But again, I'm just going to put it in the pot, let it bloom, and then I'll make my decision at the next potting if I want to change the entire direction. I like that the best, so let's get some soil in there. So 1 part akadama, 1 part pumice, and 1 part lava rock is what I'm using for my bonsai soil. So I only have 1 set of wires here, and I just poured some rocks in there, so I'll make it more challenging when I put my second wire in. But I want to be able to see if I can locate this tree, put it where I want it first, at an angle over to the right. If I meet this guy and this guy back over here, I can wire in my tree back over here. Always pulling up and together. Cut off some of the extra already. Seeing if that's where I want it. Right now I can lift the whole pot with just that 1 wire. That might be all I have to do is incorporate this 1 wire. I might not need another wire. There. So just like that, no wire can be seen. It's completely hidden. It's not sacrificing this root. And I can lift it up, which means it's solid in there. and it's not going to fall off by the wind. Once I get soil in there to fill in the gaps. Whoops. So I'm going to bring this around to this side. My other tie was here. Cut off the extra already. It's just in my way. So again, super strong, left to right, right to left. And I got my little angled tree there, just a little bit of an angle to expose this root more. And now we'll go ahead and fill it with some more. Again, one third akadama, 1/3 lava rock, and 1/3 pumice. Anywhere there's roots sticking up, I'm going to cut those off. They probably will just die off anyway here in the near future. So now I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this lava, pumice, and akadama is going underneath, in between the heavy dense root system. Always remember when we're repotting our trees, we want the least amount of spaces of air in our tree. We want a good balance of oxygen and water, so we want to make sure we get in there and shimmy those rocks around. Now it's time to give a good watering. Bonsai on the cheap. My watering cans are all recycled juice containers that I drill a couple of different varying size holes in so I can get more water in out or less water in. And I'm just going to water this thing super thoroughly to get rid of all the akadama, lava, and pumice dust off of there. My other source of water here. Water's already running through the roots and leaking out, which is good. I'm just going to keep going, getting this thing nice and full of water with all this stress. It's 37 degrees outside today with our storm brewing. We got another storm coming here. March Madness. So we got our water there. It's going to come right through. And there's our repotted azalea. I want this to bloom now. Make sure that I get a nice flowering tree here in the spring and make it look pretty. Take a few pictures and then we'll do some more pruning. We'll get those multi-branches down to 2 and continue on our quest to make this thing more ramified and looking pretty. So there you have it. There is the repotting of the azalea. Satsuki Azalea. It's March Madness, so we got some more trees to do.